All right, it's time. Let's talk about the divorce. So I've been away for quite a while. Let me tell you why. At this point, the case is over. I've been trying to get this divorce settled. It was a lot longer process than I thought, and I haven't talked about it in any official way up until this point. There's two different...
The moment you take a journey, what an act of... The moment you enter...
Pushing through. And guess what? I was right. I always knew that people were far more empathetic in the real world than the way that they presented themselves online. Online interaction, especially anonymous interaction, breeds cruelty. That's why I firmly believe, genuinely believe that everyone's got a little socialist dog in them. It's just, you know, it's about unlocking that potential. Sexist, homophobic opinions, and they would just like blurt it out. But somewhere along the line, YouTube realized that like it's really good for the algorithm if someone is specifically doing that for visibility. Okay? And obviously there was the whole like Joe Rogan pipeline, the Joe Rogan Experience pipeline that went all the way to the furthest right corners, race realists and neo-Nazis galore. And then there was at least a little bit of pushback during Woke 1.0, where people like myself started popping up, H-Bomber guy, all these people started like popping up. There was a whole bread tube era. Probably not the best reaction or response to this barrage of reactionary opinions. Let's be real, right? And now we're back in this predicament where there are still so many quote unquote apolitical guys who just are not apolitical at all. They're just right-wing, or they lean into right-wing sentiment, or they know that they have plenty of right-wing audience members, so they never dare attack right-wing opinions. And there's no such restraint when it comes to identifying and attacking left-wing opinions. This creates, once again, that exact same disparity that existed in the initial wave of apolitical centrist to far-right pipeline that existed on YouTube. There are a lot of people who don't necessarily have reactionary opinions.
I know, predatory content creators, swatting, lolcows, doxing cases, and so on. What I want to highlight is the scale and industrialization of online cruelty. How it developed from isolated, unmonetizable, largely publicly despised cases to normalized industrialization of monetizable cruelty. And honestly, this whole video was inspired by this clip from XQC.
You guys are naming people that are like sex offenders and out there racist and like people that promote harm and shit. Yo, that's not canceled. That's the law. That's the law.
Yeah, it's kind of wild that that same guy who has this 10-10 clip, perfect, no notes, then became a monster himself.
When you do a crime, you go to jail. You're not canceled! You're a criminal!
Which, you know.
And that lolcowing and mass harassment of women. Mass harassment of women has always been like a primary motivator on the internet. It was far more normalized even back in the day, especially during Gamergate, where it reached its like, not peak necessarily because it's far worse now, but lolcowing is a very specific type, like A-logging, lolcowing. This type of shit only existed in like far-right internet forums where people could anonymously cyberstalk, dox, and actively try to ruin the lives of people that they were, you know, targeting. Oftentimes they'd find like someone who's autistic, someone who might be trans, right? And some of these websites literally have leaderboards of like who they've been able to drive to suicide. Right? It's really dark shit. Except that used to be in, like, you used to have to look for that kind of thing if that was your freak, if that is what satisfied your freakish nature, right? Nowadays, there are entire communities, yes, cyberbullying. There are entire communities dedicated to cyberbullying with content creators that generate income, generate revenue off of cyberbullying other content creators. And it's kind of crazy because most of those people that make a living off of that.
Wasn't of course about goodwill or an ideological stance on free speech. Kick was founded after Twitch began to ban gambling streams on the platform. Who were the most prominent gambling streamers on Twitch? Trainwrecks, XQC and Aiden Ross. But wait, paying millions of dollars to streamers, 95-5 revenue split, where does all that money come from? Well, who founded Kick? Next to Trainwrecks, Ed Craven and Bijan Tehrani, co-founders of Stake.com, an online gambling platform. So, the company's goal is fairly easy to calculate. The more people on Kick, the more people could migrate over to Stake.com. So, ad revenue isn't their only main income stream, it's also online gambling. The more attention Kick generates, the more profit it potentially generates. And the fact that most of the viewers are minors is of course just a cool fun fact.
I ain't turning down $100 million, bro. You got me brother. I'll go on there and I will crypto gamble 24/7, dude. At that point, man, it's the parents' fault. You got me up. Them kids, dude. Them kids.
More in line with the previously mentioned prank content, you have the likes of Neon or Jack Doherty, who dedicated their entire online presence to being a public nuisance. It's obvious that by being a provocative they hope for any sort of escalation, so the moment can get clipped and distributed by paid clip farmers on platforms like Reddit or X, the Everything app. This will boost their virality and attention, therefore more profit. And as the good old prank videos, this type of content is always filled with edginess, racism, or any sort of hate speech.
You're gonna burn in fucking hell, you Jewish.
Goddamn.
And if being a walking sewage isn't enough for you, well then we could go a step further, into abuse.
W in the chat if we should go and punch him up. They all want him to get punched up.
A man arrived.
Yeah, another right but too early moment for me was when I warned Train about unregulated platforms devolving into Nazi pedophile cesspools. When Kick first started, I told Train very publicly, I was like, look, man, more competition in the streaming space is good for all streamers. Okay? That means that like Twitch has to be a more competitive platform, offer better contracts to his content creators, not drop the ball as much. Okay? So I don't necessarily have an issue with a new competitive platform being born in this field. But I have to warn you that you guys are not regulating your platform at all because you want growth. And when you have an unregulated platform, when there's no TOS, when there's no moderation, it's going to turn into a neo-Nazi infested shithole filled to the brim with pedophiles. And lo and behold, that's precisely what happened with Kick. Okay? That is exactly what happened with Kick. Another moment of being right, but too...
So,
why isn't any other independent media showed what's really going on? I haven't seen this anywhere else but on here. What do you mean? Dog, every outlet in independent media on political Twitter and also even down to CNN is sponsored by Katchii, Polymarket, and numerous other versions of this exact same thing. They all get paid. They all get sponsored and they all get paid. And that also creates a lot of animosity with people like myself because I'm seen as someone who's up the bag for them. Just as the initial wave of gambling sponsored streamers who I used to be friends with, by the way, like good friends with, close friends with, all developed tremendous amounts of hatred towards me and towards Pokimane and farmed a lot of outrage, manufactured a lot of drama, manufactured a lot of hatred on my name, did so not because they had sincerely held disagreements, but because they did not want people to listen to what I had to say. Because if people were charitably encountering my content and then they heard me talk about the dangers of gambling addiction, then all of a sudden their audience is going to be like, well, wait a minute. This guy that you're friends with, who I am also charitable to, is actually making a lot of sense about gambling addiction. They're going to turn around and confront their own content creators. And in an effort to cut that, they just chopped people like myself up. The same angst or the same animosity exists because virtually everyone is sponsored by Prize Picks, Katchii, and numerous other versions of gambling sponsorships. That's what it is. Everyone is sponsored by it. And therefore, everyone has a shared interest in making sure that nobody else f***s up the bag. Everyone else has a shared interest in ensuring that no one turns around and says, this stuff is actually really bad. This is not good at all. We're just like selling vices to people. I'm going to eat my microwave meal and I'm going to throw YouTube on. And then there's just like this barrage of content that I'm just going to mindlessly consume. And maybe I'll just like check in on what's going on in the world. I'll develop somewhat of an understanding of what's going on in the internet drama sphere. And when you get on that pipeline, you might be like, yeah, why the fuck am I doing this gig economy job? I have, I have a Bachelor of Arts and Sciences. And you have certain opinions. You're like, I don't really fuck with my landlord. Why won't, I've been asking my landlord to fix my AC. It's 100 degrees and this still hasn't. And you have these certain experiences and you're starting to develop certain political attitudes, certain political opinions. But if the only people whose content you're consuming are telling you guys like me are wrong and bad and evil villains, without realizing it, you start slowly but surely moving in their direction politically as well. Because they don't just stay at Hassan is bad, Hassan is a villain, Morgan sucks, she's getting dominated, look, she's getting owned, and you're watching that and you're like, you're celebrating it now. You're like, okay, I've realized that like these people are real villains in society, and seeing them in pain, in like awful, seeing them in awful conditions makes me feel a little bit better about how shitty my worldview is, right? But slowly but surely, they're also telling you something else. One, they're distracting you with this shit, okay? But then also, maybe you're watching the other videos where Asmongold is reacting to migrants doing mass rapes or something. And you're like, wait a minute. That does make sense. And before you realize it, you're getting red pilled. And it's not, red pilling is not a positive thing either. Because day in, day out, you're doing this miserable thing. And that miserable thing is the only thing that gives you a sense of purpose, aside from your shit ass job that you despise. This is how people lose themselves on the internet. Okay? This is how people fall down the right-wing radicalization pipeline. And slowly but surely, they start embodying the rest of the ideology of the community that they're a part of. And the ideologies of these communities are unbelievably far right, constantly blaming transgender people, migrants, liberals. They're all responsible. Women are the reason why you don't have what you were supposed to have. Because you were born for a purpose. You were put on God's green earth for a purpose. This can't be all that you do. Okay? So someone has to be responsible. It must have been stolen from you. Okay? Someone stole your purpose from you. And that's got to be feminism. It's got to be wokeness. It's got to be transgender people. All of these people have the exact same class interest as you. They all want a roof over their head to make yourself feel powerful. This is not healthy. It's not productive. And unfortunately, this is the grand design. This is how you divide the working class. This is how you destroy solidarity. This is how you make sure, this is how the wealthy, the billionaires, the millionaires, the capital owning class have successfully divided and conquered the working class. Okay? That's it.
They're pushing the boundaries more and more, making edgier and edgier jokes, being as controversial as possible. This tactic of content creation not only mirrors the main tactic of the modern far right, but is also the main recruitment strategy of modern fascists. Pushing the extreme normalizes the obscene, political extremism, and pure cruelty. Unmoderated, edgy content radicalizes. And the White House knows this.
Yeah, before you know it, cruelty becomes the point. Like, the chief characteristic of the mass man is not brutality and backwardness, but is isolation and lack of normal social relationships.
This development of the internet is not a coincidence. One person clearly understood all of this, unlike the rest of us. The Leni Riefenstahl of the Tea Party, as the founder of Breitbart called him. Steve Bannon, one of the main architects of the modern far-right. Bannon knew that by being able to influence culture, we are also able to influence politics. Mobilizing angered gamers during the Gamergate hate campaign was his first successful test ground, together with Milo Yiannopoulos. He saw the potential in politically mobilizing a huge online army, and it didn't take long for other creators to notice that manufacturing outrage was like hitting the jackpot. What had initially been niche hate forums on 4chan now infects the White House. Even though Gamergate has been discussed to death, I don't think that the majority of people realize the massive ripple effects it caused. It's of course bullshit to attribute the rise of fascism solely to phenomena like Gamergate, as I mentioned in the new Aesthetics of Fascism. The main reason should be blamed on neoliberalism and therefore the losing trust in the democratic system. Fascists exploit this by tapping into that collective frustration. They amplify the feeling of despair by manufacturing more and more outrage. That amplified anger can now be turned into moral outrage instead of facing real systemic issues. That moral outrage, culture war, is a self-sustaining machine, protecting capital interests. We lose ourselves in individual moralism, cancel culture drama bullshit, while losing parts of our humanity and basic decency in the process.
How do you not have a cynical view of the world after doing this for so many years? You want to know why I don't have a cynical view? Because back then I had like, what, 1,000 viewers. Now I have 30,000. I just did the work. I just kept pushing through. I just kept combating reactionary opinions on the internet in some of the most right-wing circles on the internet. And guess what? I was right. I knew that there were always people out there who felt like they were just leaning into this shit because everyone else was leaning into it. Okay? That's it. I always knew that people were far more empathetic in the real world than the way that they presented themselves online. Online interaction, especially anonymous interaction, breeds cruelty. That's why I firmly believe, genuinely believe that everyone's got a little socialist dog in them. It's just, it's about unlocking that potential. The power of socialism is that we understand why the world the way it is. Cynicism and doomerism is just your liberalism dying.